What's up? What's happening? Welcome in. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. So if you're watching the show on YouTube, you can tell Chris Russell is back today because I'm still. Chris has been in the last couple of days. As Ben Strober's in for Anthony again, as he will be all week. Russell's been here, been on the air, but he hasn't been in studio the last couple of days, and so having to readjust to not having an hour before the show to set everything up. It's a little bit of a mad scramble sometimes. Now you've really gotten the full Hoffman Show experience, Ben.
Shout out Anthony Haney. Happy birthday.
Yes, shout out to my guy. I forgot how to say happy birthday in French. It's Feliz Cumpleaños in Spanish, but I think he's still in Paris. He's not in Barcelona yet. So I should text him. In fact, I might. I don't think. Oh no, my phone is in my pocket. I'll have to text Anthony. I'm gonna go ahead and open a blank text to Anthony right now, and then when I open my phone in the commercial break, I'll remember to send it to him. So Ben, thanks for that.
Of course.
Good work out of you. So today we got a whole bunch of stuff happening on the show. We have a lot of NBA. We have some WNBA as well. We will also let you hear a little Take Command, I think, at 5:30. A very fun discussion Logan and I had answering a mailbag question of why the answer to the question, what is the low threshold for athleticism to play in the NFL, is essentially Logan Paulson. That's kind of how that discussion wound up going, but we will get to that a little bit later. We start, though, in the NBA, where the Milwaukee Bucks have completely taken us by surprise with a monster move that we did not see coming. And in some ways, this is a more significant, name value move than it is a move the needle move. Because Damian Lillard has a torn Achilles. He's going to miss all of next season. And he's older at this point. He's not the prime top 10 player he was. He's not the guy playing at the level that got him on the NBA's all-time 75 list a couple years ago. This is a different kind of guy. But the Bucks made a very interesting roster decision, and what they're doing with Lillard that I think shows, this is a team that's very serious about going for it. And about I wasn't even a month ago probably, we had Greg Matzik on, who's going to join us again today at 4:30. We're also going to check in Atlanta with our guy Mike Conti on the Hawks, because I think the Hawks are crushing this offseason. But the Milwaukee Bucks, the rumors were Giannis is going to basically tell them what the deal is. And I asked Greg, hey, when do we expect to hear? And Greg literally scoffed at the question. He's like, there's nothing happening with Giannis. And, the national types keep trying to, stir the pot, But he was so adamant, and I respect it as a guy who sometimes we just know better about our local teams than the national folks who seem to occasionally be bored and need new things to talk about, or are incapable of talking about new things and just talk about the same old things over and over and over again, even though there's no there. And he's just like, Giannis wants to stay. He's not going anywhere. The Bucks are going to build around him. And I was like, good. That's what should happen. The Bucks need to build around Giannis because what are you going to do? You spend your whole life trying to find a guy like Giannis. You got him. He's a hero there because he's already won a title. He's only 31. It's not like he's, 40. He's 31 years old. He's in his prime. When he's playing at his level, he's arguably the best player in the world. All due respect to Nikola Jokic, their numbers aren't that different when Giannis is cooking. Jokic has just been able to cook more consistently over the last couple of seasons. So, obviously, they make the move a couple years ago when Giannis is considering the extension to go out and get Lillard. I commend their aggressiveness in trying to build around Giannis, and they did something that I think is pretty fascinating. In order to sign Miles Turner, who they're hoping, I think, turns into what Brooke Lopez was on those championship teams. They need to figure out the Drew Holiday piece, but we'll get there. In order to sign Miles Turner to a 4-year, $107 million deal, they are waiving and stretching the contract of Damian Lillard. So what that means is they waive him, and the dead money, instead of all being eaten over the next 2 years, he had 2 years, $113 million left on his contract. By the way, an extension. Ben, do you know when the Damian Lillard extension kicks in?
Tell me.
Today.
Are you like today?
Today. The contract he signed a couple of years ago, the extension, when he got to Milwaukee, he will play 0 games on that extension for the Milwaukee Bucks.
How about that?
It's going to cost them a lot of money, though.
There's so many things in sports today that involve guys getting paid.
It's Bobby
for not
Bonilla
playing.
Day.
It's Bobby Bonilla Day. It's Chris Davis Day if you're an Orioles fan. Chris Davis is making $9 million today. That's more than everyone except 2 players on the Orioles right now.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Deferred money is
Happy
wild.
July 1st.
Happy July 1st. And it's going to be, it's not necessarily Dame Lillard Day over the next couple, because I don't know how the cash flow works on that. What I do know is that the cap hits, the dead money that they are taking on for this, will be stretched out over 5 years instead of 2. So they are taking a 22 to 25 million. I can't remember if it's 22.5 or 25. But a over 20 million cap hit each of the next 5 years. And I think that's really interesting, because I could make the argument they should just eat it over the next 2 years and take a step back this year, see what you can maneuver, see if you can trade him next year as a player who might be able to play. Like, you might have to attach draft capital to get off him, but at that point he's an expiring contract. But they're like, no, we're going to handicap ourselves, but we're going to make sure that we do not waste a year of Giannis's prime. He's 31. He's had some injury stuff that started to creep up. We just don't know how much longer we're going to have this guy playing at elite, all NBA type levels. And so we're going to go for it. And that means getting Miles Turner. That means operating at basically a $20 million deficit every single year moving forward. And while I don't know that strategically it's the right thing to do, I don't feel like I am in a position to say that. I don't know how the free agency looks up the next couple of years. I don't know what other moves they think they can make. And I respect that front office because they have gotten real creative over the years. What I can definitively say is I respect the hell out of them for going for it. Now, they're going to need some pieces to work. They're going to need Kyle Kuzma to play at a much, much higher level than he played for his final year with the Wizards and his first whatever months that was in Milwaukee. He was not very good for them. The Wizards look to have severely won that trade in getting a prospect in A.J. Johnson, nevertheless, the draft capital moving forward that they have from Milwaukee. But if Kyle can rebound and be what he was 2 years ago, and he's still plenty young enough to do that, and Miles Turner's playing really well, and Giannis is Giannis in an East where Tyrese Halliburton is out. Now, by the way, you've also weakened the team that seemed most likely to reign supreme in the East the next couple of years in Indiana. They have to replace Miles Turner now, and they don't have a lot of ways to do that. Retaining your own free agents because of how it works with the cap and the exceptions and your ability to go over the cap, like that stuff's super important. And now Indiana just lost him after. Ironically, I saw this great post this morning from Kevin O'Connor from Yahoo. Miles Turner was in trade rumors for 10 years in Indiana. They never traded him, and it finally felt like after this finals run, he was going to stay, and now he's gone. But they lose him for nothing. They lose him just as a free agent who walks out the door, no draft capital in return, unless they can somehow figure out a sign and trade. And I don't think Milwaukee is going to go through all of these hoops to try to give something up. They're just going to be like, no, we created the space. Like we're gonna do this. And so I think the defining thing of free agency so far is there are teams that are going for it. There are teams like Houston who have made really smart trades, starting with the Durant trade and then been able to sign a couple of guys, and those teams are going for it. Atlanta has seen the opportunity in the Eastern Conference and is going for it. Milwaukee is going for it. There's a couple other teams that are sitting a little more pat or have gotten beaten out for some stuff, and it's like, man, are they just going to accept kind of where they are? What are they hoping to do? So we'll run through some of the big moves next. We'll run through, the Wizards haven't done anything yet. They don't really have a lot of room to do stuff. They don't really have a lot of roster spots, and they've got a ton of young players, so they're not looking to necessarily sign veterans, but we can also take a look at who is available and who might be on the Wizards' radar. But I respect these teams that are going for it in an era where it'd be easy to just be like, hey, Oklahoma City is going to be awesome. okay, let's go. Watch them repeat. There are teams that are like, no, we're going to challenge. We're going to take our shot. And we'll talk about some more of those teams with some people who cover them as we go. Again, Greg Matzik covers Milwaukee at 4:30. Mike Conti at 5. We'll talk to my guy Ben Pickman at 6 o'clock, who covers the WNBA, about a piece he wrote with his colleague Sabrina Merchant, why Caitlin Clark might be worth $1 billion with a B to the league, as well as the Aaliyah Edwards trade rumors that popped up today from ESPN. So lots to come here on the Team 980. We're just getting started on the Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too. At the Team 980. All right, Ben Schrober with us for the week. Anthony celebrating his birthday over in Europe, so we'll get the stories when he gets back. Ben, did you have a favorite move that a team made yesterday in free agency? Or today?
Let me think about this for a second. You know, come back to me in like 1 minute.
Okay.
I need to go back and look through again everything that's happened.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I think the Miles Turner Bucks thing is probably my favorite. Like them just being like, let's go for it. I do think there's a chance it winds up being a little short-sighted, that the better move would have been to just eat Dame's contract for the year, trade him hopefully next summer when he's an expiring, and go from there. But, you know, that is what it is. So I think some of the other ones that I really like is the Nuggets getting Jonas Valanciunas. That's good center depth for them. They obviously need to get some other guys. They did bring back Bruce Brown, which is hilarious because everyone's criticized them for letting Brown walk after the championship. Now he comes back, having kind of been an NBA vagabond ever since. He never really stuck any of the other places he was. He signs the big contract, or the good contract, not huge, in Indiana, gets traded in the Siakam deal to Toronto. Doesn't really play. When he does play, it's not great. So hopefully he can find it. And then, you know, we'll talk to Mike Conti from Atlanta coming up at 5 o'clock. Dude, the Hawks getting Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard, they just keep adding dudes. Nickeil Alexander-Walker's a hell of a backup point guard and someone who can probably start with Trae Young, depending on what they want to do lineup-wise, or if one of their other young stud wings gets hurt. Like, they're defensively going to be so nasty around Trae Young, who obviously needs the help. And then Kennard just like, let's get more shooting. Sick.
That was my favorite, was Kennard.
Like,
for Atlanta, because I didn't even really know Atlanta as a team that we'd expect to go this hard after it here in this free agency period. And now when you look at the roster top to bottom for the Hawks, you go, wait, they kind of have a squad there. And now you add Kennard, and it's just it's giving Kyle Korver vibes all over again from like 2015 with the way they bring in a guy that can shoot the ball like that. Because those Hawks teams with Jeff Teague were actually dangerous until they got swept by the Cavs, of course. But I could see Kennard being in the same kind of role that Korver was in those prime years of Atlanta basketball.
I mean, they're like 10 deep. They're legit, depending on how their rookie Asa Newell does. They're legit 10 deep. I mean, Trey Johnson, Dyson Daniels, Jalen Johnson, Kristaps Porzingis, Okongwu at center, Kennard, Alexander Walker, Reece Shea, the number 1 overall pick. And I realize it was a weird year, but the number 1 overall pick last year is coming off the bench. Newell. And then, they got Kristaps Porzingis, and they can afford to play him. Like, I would just play KP like 20 minutes a night until the playoffs. And then if he's still healthy and awesome, like just unleash him in the playoffs. He, for Boston, was so good and is such a game changer. And it's not like he's old. He's not young anymore. And I really wish we, had a better understanding of what happened with like whatever sickness, illness last year. But he's 29 years old. Like theoretically, he's still in his prime. And so if you look at this Eastern Conference, which again, I know everyone's talking about it, but like Boston's kind of out for the year because of Tatum. Halliburton out, like goodbye Indiana. Like, we'll see how good Milwaukee is. Miami's probably the weakest they've been in a while. Like, the Knicks, I like the Gershon Yushabele, the French guy who's had a couple of cups of coffee in the NBA. Like, he's a fine player, good for depth. He'll run around and do some stuff. For what coach? I don't know. The Knicks still don't have a coach. That's fun. But, like, the Knicks will be good. But, like, why not the Hawks? Why, they made the conference finals like 3-4 years ago, and then it obviously hasn't gone great since. I think this roster's way better than that roster was.
They've
retooled. The East is probably weaker.
They've retooled so well. In the past couple of years, ever since they were in the conference finals in 2021, the Hawks have kind of, for me, defined mediocre. Like, they have been the most mediocre team in basketball for the last 3 years. They're not bad, but they're not particularly good, which is interesting because they've had Trae Young this whole time. They just haven't really been able to get enough necessary pieces around him to get them over the hump. But now with the East as weak as it is, as you've just mentioned a second ago, I guess it's the time that Atlanta now has felt it's time to go for it and enter a win-now mode. And suddenly maybe the Hawks are actually a team we might see top 4 in the East this year.
I think they're definitely a top 4 team in the East. I think the question I have with Atlanta is kind of the fundamental question. Like, if you want to look at it, because now there's probably people listening who are like, oh, hey, Craig, well, you've been so defensive of what, and by defensive, I don't mean like defensive. That's not the right word. You have been complimentary of what the Wizards have done. You have said it's the right move. And it's like, well, the Hawks never tanked. You know, they had the number 1 pick last year, but they got there based off of like lottery luck. They didn't have quite the Mavs odds, but they were like 3% to get the number 1 pick. So they've never been a team that's just totally bottomed out. But they've drafted really well in the middle with guys like Dyson Daniels, who looks like a defensive player of the year type candidate. You know, guys like Jalen Johnson. They've done really well. They also, it should be said, like, they went for it with the DeJounte Murray trade and then got really lucky that they were able to retrade him at a similar value. And so they unloaded a bunch of picks, got a bunch of picks back in trading him, and then they got extra lucky because Murray, ultimately tore his Achilles last year for the Pelicans. But my question for Atlanta isn't like, can they compete in the East in 2025? My question for Atlanta is like, are you actually, let's say you win the East next year. Are you getting smoked in the finals by Oklahoma City, by Denver, by Minnesota? Like, that, to me, the answer is yes. And that becomes the question, is like, has Atlanta now, like, is Atlanta good enough to take another step? Do they have the resources to take another step? And how have they made themselves attractive enough to a potential star and do they have the resources that they have stuff to trade? Because I still don't think they have a traditional best player on a championship team type player. And I don't think they have, like, Trey, could you squint your eyes and convince yourself that Trey Young is Tyrese Halliburton and that player trying a little harder on defense could power a championship team? You could try to make that argument. I just don't know if it's true. But that would be the difference between, I think, them and like the Wizards is the Wizards don't even have the Trey Young piece. And I don't know if the Trey Young piece is good enough to actually win a title.
Another team I'm really interested in right now because they haven't done a whole lot is the Minnesota Timberwolves. From what we've seen, and of course,
well, they did retain Julius Randle and Naz Reid, and that's
was important. I think losing important. Alexander Walker, is key for them. But internally, I'm not sure where the Timberwolves view themselves right now because they haven't appeared desperate to make a move here. The past couple of years, they've been really close, haven't been able to get over the hump, but not a lot of activity really right now from Minnesota.
Yeah,
other than retaining these key guys.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately for them, I think that's all they can really do. There was obviously talk of them trying to get in the Durant sweepstakes, but I am pretty sure, they're a second apron team. So, like, they're out of room. Like, the reason they lost Nickeil Alexander-Walker is because they had to make room for Naz Reid. And they were just like, we're going to prioritize, obviously, the market was robust enough for Nickeil Alexander-Walker that they couldn't get him back on a contract that they wanted. And so they're just very limited in what they can do.
How many teams are second apron teams right now?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer.
Like, I feel like it's a lot.
There's quite a few that are close. There's a couple teams like I think you look at a move. Or just real quick on Minnesota. They bring back Joe Ingles too, so they kind of keep their veteran guy in place, even though he didn't play a lot for them. But like this is why they get Rob Dillingham. This is why they get Terrence Shannon in the draft. They need guys to make internal growth, and sometimes that's what you need. And the Nuggets relied upon that a couple years ago, and their young guys didn't step up, and now it feels like they've made a huge mistake in not trying to figure out how to bring back Bruce Brown a couple years ago and some of the other guys they lost. You need some of those internal guys to step up. But you see some of these moves that are made, like the Kings. I think I saw they saved like $5 million in the Valanciunas trade, but in doing that, they saved actually $14 million in cash. And more importantly, they were able to stay under one of the thresholds and avoid being a repeater team. And that comes with some even heavier restrictions. So a lot of the moves that get made are financial, and a lot of the reasons teams maybe aren't as aggressive. But that's why I have so much respect for a team like Atlanta, a team like Milwaukee, who is figuring out how to maneuver itself to make these moves, which is why I wanted to have someone from Atlanta and someone from Milwaukee on to discuss what they are doing. Greg Matzik, our pal from WTMJ in Milwaukee, is going to join us to do the Bucks side of things next. Mike Conti from Atlanta at 5. Some WNBA talk later as well with Ben Pickman. We're locked and loaded here on a Tuesday on The Hoffman Show. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. In fact, if you're watching us there or listening on the app right now, that's all of you. Apparently, we're having an issue with our transmitter with a massive storm that's rolled through DC here. So if you're like, you tuned in and you're like, okay, the show's on. What happened to the radio station? Our engineers are very, very good at what they do. They're working on it, but you know, you're checking us out on 1067 HD2 or on the app or on YouTube, and we appreciate you finding us when we didn't appear on your radio. That said, though, the show rolls on, and we're happy to have it roll on with Greg Matzik, who is the sports director at WTMJ in Milwaukee. Greg, how are you this afternoon? Thanks for joining us again. We got Greg. Let's see. Let's try this one more time. Ben, you might need to pull it up on your side the way it's set up right now. So there we go. I think we got Greg now. Take 3. Third time's the charm. Greg Matzik, hello.
Hey, guys. You guys doing all right out there? Sounds a little nasty.
Yeah, the storm has knocked us off the air. Our buttons are apparently all backwards. But, hey, now we can just talk basketball, and that's really all I want to do in mid-July. So last time you were on, I asked you at the very end, we had you on for a Packers adjacent thing when Jair Alexander got released. And at the end, I was like, by the way, do you think anything's going to happen with this Giannis story? And you were basically like, I don't know why everyone keeps talking about this. Giannis is staying. And boy, were you right about that, Greg. In terms, we've now seen them clearly try to build around Giannis. The moves they're making are to compete right now. What do you make of the decision to waive and stretch Damian Lillard, put themselves at a somewhat disadvantage over the next 5 years, obviously, as they'll have that $20 million cap hit, but it allows them to make moves right now they couldn't otherwise, including signing Miles Turner?
Really interesting move and kind of an unprecedented move in how far they're stretching this out in over $100 million of Lillard's contract. So he's going to get paid, but he's essentially getting paid to go away. But you're either going to pay Lillard $49 million to not play next season because of his Achilles injury, or waive him, stretch out the payments over the course of 5 years, and then free up, roughly $25, $26 million to use on somebody else, or maybe a number of players. Well, in finding Miles Turner at a fairly reasonable price, they get quite a bit younger, almost 10 years younger than Brook Lopez, 40% three-point shooter. Playing on a team with Giannis, you're going to shoot the three, you're going to have opportunities, and likely not have a lot of those threes be contested. And he's a guy who's, quite honestly, been kind of a pain in the Bucks' butt over the last couple of years. He's a good player, a fringe all-star player. So they backfill Lopez, they bring in some length. Giannis will only play center if he has to, and in certain rotations and lineups. They bring back Bobby Portis as well, who not quite the defender, but some instant offense off the bench. So I kind of like what they've done here in the front court. And then, re-signing the players who sort of made sense, who are a little younger, good role players who can also knock down open shots. And in the case of Kevin Porter Jr., maybe be your starting point guard on day one. Going to be interesting to see what happens here the rest of free agency. But you're looking at Porter and likely having to find some depth at the point guard position. But you're paying Lillard to go away instead of paying him $49 million to sit on the bench and rehab.
Do you think they make these moves if Jason Tatum is able to play next year for the Celtics and Tyrese Halliburton is able to play next year for the Pacers? And we can take out of the equation of would the Pacers have been more aggressive in re-signing Turner, just merely the availability of extra competitiveness in the Eastern Conference.
Yes, I do, because there's a filter. There's a filter that John Horst pours every bit of NBA transactional liquid down, and that is called the Giannis filter. And the Giannis filter suggests basically this: will this move help us keep Giannis? If the answer is yes, the move is made, or at least an attempt to make that move is made. If the answer to that question is no, the move is not made. And it's a very simple filter, but holding on to Dame when you know he can't play for a year and paying him nearly $50 million, that doesn't make the Bucks better, really, in any way. Letting Brook Lopez walk, I think people saw that happening. He's getting closer to 40 years old and was a key part of a Bucks championship run. But they had to get younger. They had to find a way to get a little more athletic and also not sacrifice quality in any way. So in the last couple of years, they've moved on from aging veterans. Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez. In some way, shape, or form, that made up a big three or big four, including Giannis, from a team that won a title. And now all of those pieces are gone with the exception of Giannis, the guy they had to keep. And John Horst was hell-bent on keeping Giannis in Milwaukee.
Greg Matzik, the sports director at WTMJ in Milwaukee, is with us here on the Hoffman Show. Greg, do you think there is a chance that they regret a year from now just saying, man, we should have just eaten it in 2025, 26, and maybe we could have traded Dame, gotten off all the money, and then had clean slate in terms of what his contract will count moving forward? Or is the risk too high because of the Giannis filter that you just talked about?
Yeah, I think with John Horst, it's all about how can we maximize our opportunity to win now, and let's worry about the future when it comes. And I think evidence of that are just the litany of draft picks the Bucks have traded over the years. And some have worked, by the way. Some of those trades have worked out. Others have not, right? They traded 3 second-rounders for Jay Crowder. That didn't work out very well. But what the heck does Giannis care about second-round draft picks? He doesn't. We got to win now. Let's find somebody with experience who's played in NBA Finals games before. Again, it didn't work out with Crowder, but that was part of the filter that I bring up again. Will it help us keep Giannis? Does it help put us toward a goal of winning a championship? That window is open as long as Giannis is in a Bucks uniform. So you can't convince him that we just need to wait. We need to wait and be patient here. That likely makes it more difficult to keep Giannis. So it's all about the here and the now with this current general manager and his assistants.
So there was the Giannis social media post earlier today that seemed like he was like, I don't know what's going on. And then there was pretty soon after a Chris Haynes report that he is not happy with the Damian Lillard decision. Do you buy any of that? And what do you make of the social media post? By the way, yes, I do hate myself for asking you this question, but it's one that I'm sure people are wondering. So Sports Talk Radio in 2025, it is what it is.
It's kind of a choose-your-own-adventure day if you're a Bucks fan,
Yeah.
right? So Chris Haynes says Giannis is upset with how things went down, and there's another report that says Giannis and Miles Turner have been in contact and love the opportunity to work together toward building a championship team. So it take whatever you want, however you want it. But let me say this. Giannis can be a little annoyed at how things went down with Lillard, but not be annoyed that he's not part of the team. Right? I mean, you can look at it two different ways, I suppose. But, Giannis wasn't happy when Jason Kidd got fired, and the Bucks won a title a couple years after that. Things happen in this league, and Giannis doesn't just sit on the sidelines and wait for things to happen. I think he is actively involved in discussions with the Bucks on certain things. And maybe he didn't see this one coming with Dame, but if it's all about protecting your mega superstar, and that's exactly what John Horst wants to do, sometimes tough decisions need to be made. And the Dame thing didn't work out. It likely could have, maybe, if he, is healthy and going into his third season in the Bucks uniform. But there's no guarantee he wants to stay in Milwaukee after that season. So whether Giannis is annoyed, frustrated, I don't think that really matters. I think what matters is he's going to be a part of this team next year, and you try and point your arrows in the right direction.
Greg Matzik with us here on the Hoffman Show. So, Greg, you highlighted or touched on this a little bit earlier in this chat, but what do the Bucks need to do now in your mind to become legit contenders in the East, or are they pretty much already there considering the state of the East?
Well, yeah, the state of the East is kind of odd, just given the star appeal that is down. And I guess you could include Lillard in that mix because he's not going off to, Miami or another potential contender to play next season. It's going to be at least a year, and then, he'll get to choose his own adventure, likely. But with Halliburton down and out and Brown down and out, Indiana gets hit a little more now, losing Turner. The East has never really been so wide open. A team like the Knicks are probably looking at it saying, look, we got the best shot here. And they might, as we sit here on July 1st. So I think the East is wide open for the taking. A team like Orlando becomes interesting. But I do think more teams will have those thoughts of coming out of the East and going to the finals than in previous years. So I'm wondering about the point guard position here for the Bucks because it's not a ton of depth beyond Kevin Porter Jr., who's, today your starter at point guard and a capable scorer. So they got to find a way to build some depth there. They've got shooting coming back with Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince. These guys are going to hit over 40% of their threes. Turner's kind of in that mold too. Play with Giannis and you're a three-point shooter, you're likely to have one of your better years shooting with the way he spaces the floor and the way teams collapse on him. But to make sure you've got enough depth. I think front court depth is good. Back court depth, I think, needs to be figured out.
Last but not least, the local angle for us, if you will. Obviously, there was the Kuzma trade last year, and he continued to be disappointing when he left Washington and went to Milwaukee. He just had a disappointing 2024, 2025. How high are your hopes that he can turn it around in year two with Milwaukee going into a season where he knows a contender needs him?
Not very high. I think he is what he is at this point, and that's an uber athletic, capable 20-point scorer who is routinely inefficient and occasionally makes your head bleed because he throws up shots that go off the side of the backboard and can't finish a layup, right? I mean, he has those nights. You saw it. It's like, well, what in the world? Like, he's got all the skills to be everything. And sometimes that comes together. But it's never efficient. Sometimes it just doesn't look right, and you scratch your heads wondering, just how many years he's played competitive basketball. But I think he's a guy that you're going to have to work with, and he'll be a part of things. He'll get minutes, and he can defend. But there's just wild inconsistency with his game, and that's kind of been his story from the start.
Yeah, the inconsistency is definitely a part of the Kyle Kuzma experience, and the Bucks are hoping to get the high end more often next season. Greg Matzik talking about all of it on WTMJ, where he is the sports director. Great station in Milwaukee. Greg, thanks for the time as always, and have a great summer if we don't talk to you. And we'll talk to you next time there's a Bucks or Packers story, and there seems to be one on a regular basis. So we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, you bet. Sounds good. Stay dry out there.
We'll do our best. Thanks. That's Greg Matzik with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back here on the Team 980, we'll get you updated on a couple of more deals that went down, some more thoughts on some of the movement in the NBA. We haven't talked a ton about the Western Conference yet, but we'll get back to the East at 5 o'clock with Mike Conti from Atlanta. But first, a look at what's trending. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, too, at the Team 980. Mike Conti, host of Hawks pre- and post-game, 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, joins us coming up at 5 o'clock. Ben Pickman on the WNBA at 6. So we got lots going on here on day 2 of NBA free agency. Also, the WNBA Commissioner's Cup tonight. Ben also, we're actually, truth be told, I talked to Ben about an hour ago. We had to pre-tape because he's at the Commissioner's Cup tonight. But we didn't talk about too much about the game. We talked about the Aaliyah Edwards trade rumors that ESPN reported. We talked about how much Caitlin Clark is actually worth to the league. And the answer is potentially over $1 billion. So pretty interesting insight there. But one thing I forgot to mention in what's trending, Clark, with that groin injury that's kept her out, is out tonight for the Commissioner's Cup final. So a pretty uphill battle for the Fever against the Minnesota Lynx. I will also say that we will talk about the Clark All-Star hullabaloo. If you're not aware, people are very upset that the fellow players voted Caitlin Clark 9th amongst guards in the WNBA All-Star voting. She is an All-Star starter because of the media and fan vote, but she was voted 9th by her fellow players, which clearly means all the rest of the league hates her, right? Not so much. I'll explain at 6:15 after we chat with Ben. All right. As for right now, one other really interesting move that happened yesterday. Brooke Lopez is going to Los Angeles, and that was expected. The thing is, though, Ben, he was expected to go to the Lakers. He's going to the Clippers. I think this is a really interesting move for the Clippers. I think it kind of kicks the Lakers in the knee, which the Clippers enjoy doing. But it also is a very interesting, Zubac is their starting center. He's very, very, very good. And if you can then have Lopez be a backup guy or go Twin Towers and still be able to space the floor, and he's playing 20, 22 minutes, but he can play at a pretty high level because he's 40 years old, and we just need you to play like a 4-minute stretch in each quarter, 5-minute stretch in each quarter. Like, that's a pretty nice piece if they can ever get Kawhi healthy in the playoffs, which is, I realize, a big if. But they re-signed Harden on the 2-year deal after he opts out, and that's something they kind of worked on together. The Clippers are just this. They continue to have a window open where they could be interesting. And I respect them, instead of just kind of settling for being what they are, finding a way to tweak their team and make it better. They're still hoping and praying that Kawhi can be healthy, and that's a bet that might not ever pay off. But unless they're going to blow it up and trade Kawhi, which I don't even know who would trade for him, as great as he is because of the injury risk, I kind of respect them being like, all right, well then what's the best version of us with Kawhi, and actively pursuing that. I have a lot of respect for that.
The Los Angeles Clippers, when I compare them to any other professional sports team, to me, and maybe this is just because I'm kind of a hater, they're like the Dallas Cowboys to me. They're a team that always has such high expectations, a team that always has adequate star players on the team. I know injury has been an issue because of Kawhi Leonard and what's been going on with him the past couple of years. But until I'm proven otherwise with the Clippers, thus them getting over the hump, actually getting to a conference finals or getting to an NBA finals, I'm just never going to believe in them.
I hear you. I do think it's absolutely hilarious that you compare them to the Dallas Cowboys, and I will tell you why. I have no other way to say this. You are too young to remember what the Clippers were to anyone who is over the age of 35, which includes me at the age of 35. Before Steve Ballmer bought them, because your entire sports viewing life, they have been owned by Steve Ballmer. Do you remember the Donald Sterling scandal?
Yeah, of course.
But how old were you when the Donald Sterling scandal happened?
Well, what year was it?
2011, probably?
So I was 8?
No, it was 2014.
Oh, so I was 11.
Yeah. So
that's right when I got into basketball, kind of. That was when the Wizards got good.
Right. And so most of you are you remember the scandal, but probably you don't remember as much as you think you do because you were 11. By the way, Ramona Shelburne did an incredible 30 for 30 podcast on the, if you ever want to go find deep it. I don't even know if the 30 for 30 podcast is still a thing. I just remember listening to it at some point in my life. But Ramona did amazing reporting on it. But like before Ballmer took over and this became a real franchise with real ambition, and then failed a lot with Chris Paul and Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan, and then ultimately this version with Harden, Kawhi, Russ, the various foot pieces that have been in Paul George over the past couple of years. They weren't even a laughing stock. They were whatever's worse than that. They were like a pity party. Like the Clippers were synonymous with being the worst team in the league. Like Donald Sterling was a legitimate Daniel Snyder level owner, but he even felt like cheaper and worse somehow. Like he could have easily had the same congressional investigations. Just an absolutely terrible person who was terrible at being an owner in charge of what should have been a marquee franchise. And now you have Ballmer, who is the opposite of that. Just everybody loves the guy. He's super rich. He spends money like he's super rich. He built them their own arena. It's the nicest one in the league. He's like trying to buy, hey, if you buy season tickets on the wall and we make the playoffs, we'll fly you private to every single playoff game. Like we'll charter like this dude is doing stuff that other NBA owners are probably like, hey man, we're rich, but like we don't have that kind of money. You need to chill out. Like that's who Steve Ballmer is, the polar opposite. And so I think the Cowboys thing is funny because there is nothing glitz and glamour about the Clippers unless you are below 30 years old and don't remember the Donald Sterling days. But in terms of having expectations and then not meeting them on the court or always seemingly falling short at or even a round before it would be acceptable to fall short, I do understand the comparison between the Cowboys and the Clippers that you just made.
Yep, that's the exact point I was going for. Organizationally, completely opposite. One is owned by Jerry Jones, the other Ballmer.
Yeah, and
very different people.
Very, very different in so many ways. But one is running like a mom and pop shop in the Cowboys, and Steve Ballmer's like, I'm going to run a tech icon or tech titan type of organization. So I like what they're doing, and the Lakers need to figure out what the heck they're doing. They're in a weird spot, man. I don't know what you do because LeBron's still awesome, but I don't know if he's $50 million awesome. And they need to build around Luka, and there's still there seems to be a lot of smoke around that whole situation. We'll see what the Lakers can do to try to be competitive this season. And also, apparently Rob Pelinka was making stuff, or leaking stuff about cap space in 2027. You have Luka and LeBron now. You should be able to compete if you can put anything around them. So, go do that. Anyway, coming up next, the Hawks, I love what they're doing. To quote Zach Lowe, cacaw. He does a better version of it. The point is, Mike Conti of 92.9 The Game in Atlanta is standing by, and he is going to join us next here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. An hour from now, Ben Pickman from The Athletic on the latest WNBA news, expansion, trade rumors, etc. 5:30, a little take command for you, a little football talk here on the show on July 1st. But top story today is NBA free agency. It's time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
If you had told me, let's say early June, that one of my favorite off seasons in the NBA of any team was going to be the Atlanta Hawks, I'd be like, okay. And then they've had an awesome one. And if you had told me that that would not involve trading Trae Young, I would have been like, yeah, how'd they do that? They have. And to talk about it now, Mike Conti, 92.9 The Game in Atlanta. Mike, welcome back to the show. Appreciate your time. And how we doing on this day 2 of NBA free agency?
I am equally shocked as you that the Hawks have been this efficient and effective, and Trae Young is still on the team. Would not have been on my bingo card.
So let's talk about it. They make the Kristaps Porzingis trade. They have signed a couple of key free agents, including Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Luke Kennard. But take us back, let's go end of the regular season first. So for the Hawks, the end of the play-in, where did you think the team was going to go? What options did you think they had?
Well, this is a critical offseason. It really still is as far as Trae Young's future with the Hawks is concerned, because he is entering that window for that Supermax extension, and the Hawks would probably need to do that this summer, or if they had no intention on keeping Trae Young, they would probably need to part ways with Trae this summer in order to get something of value in return. And it's starting to feel more and more like Trae is going to be a part of this going forward for reasons we can get into in a moment. But it really felt like at the end of that very brief run, if you will, in the play-in round for the Hawks, that there was a pretty decent chance that Trae Young was not going to be back with Atlanta, that this was a team really stuck in the mud making the play-in round the last couple years after they had that run of the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021 and almost made the NBA Finals. Really, they have been in neutral or even regressing a little bit every year since. With that being said, they also have the number 1 pick in the draft 2 years ago. They took Zachary Rieseshay. He turned out to be someone who exceeded expectations in his rookie year. Bringing in Dyson Daniels from New Orleans, that was someone who exceeded expectations, ended up most improved player. Jalen Johnson was someone who showed a lot of flashes before his injury. So the thought was here in Atlanta, all right, you might have 3 guys that you can build around, and you don't necessarily need Trae Young to be part of that mix. And now things have evolved where it seems like Trae Young is not only going to be part of the mix, but now he might even be recruiting players to join him and try to form some kind of team that could compete for a top 4 spot in the Eastern Conference.
So do you think that they looked around, sent out feelers and didn't like what they were going to get for Trae Young in return? Or do you think that this team and this front office, which has had some changes as well this offseason, has a steadfast belief that they can build either around or with Trae Young, and we can get to the around or with in a second? But, do you think they sniffed around, or do you think that they were always planning to go this kind of route?
I think they sniffed. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's still light sniffing taking place, although probably not as determined as maybe it was during the middle of last season, towards the end of last season. I definitely think they probed the market, and they would be responsible in doing so. You always want to know what you can get for an asset like Trae Young. I think the way that things unfolded in the Eastern Conference with the injuries to Dame and Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton, that may have changed the calculus more than anything else here in Atlanta, because I think pretty much any team in the Eastern Conference outside of the teams affected by those injuries, Indiana and Boston and Milwaukee, are now probably more in buying mode. And I think Orlando was the first team that sent that signal when they gave up 5 first-round picks for Desmond Bane. But everything has evolved so dramatically in the Eastern Conference over the last couple of weeks with these big players getting injured that I would imagine the Hawks front office, led by a new general manager, Ansi Soleil, who took over for Landry Fields at the end of the regular season, they probably assessed that, hey, we have a window right now in the Eastern Conference. Let's go out and see what we can do, and let's see if we can do it building around Trae Young.
So, as Mike Conti is with us, 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, there is the lingering question of this contract situation for Trae Young and the potential for a supermax or some other kind of extension. Do you think that they have the gumption, the leverage, the whatever other words you want to use, to go to Trae Young and say, Trae, we really love you, but we can't build the team the way that we want to if we pay you the supermax? You're also not going to get that from anyone else because you literally can't. We want to keep you, but can we work with you on something that is sub-supermax? Do you think Trae Young would go for that? Do you think they have the ability to even ask that in the first place? And part of that, Mike, is caring if he says, no, it's supermax or bust, then looking at it and being like, okay, well, we're going to engineer your way out of here. Do you think they are at that point with Trae Young, and would they try it?
I have no inside knowledge if they're at that point. My feeling is that would be a very dangerous road to take. Look, Trae Young, for the most part, has been someone who has fit very, very well into what Quinn Snyder is trying to do with the Atlanta Hawks. The obvious liability with Trae Young is his defense. In covering the Hawks, I'm on the radio broadcast, so I get to see Trae play every night. I don't think Trae's struggles on defense are tied to lack of effort. I think he gets picked on because of his size. What the Hawks have now done, and this might be a hint, maybe a little bit of a tip to where they're going to go with Trae in this offseason, is I think they've made themselves tougher to play against by bringing in a Porzingis, and you guys know in Washington, there's absolutely no guarantee that Porzingis is going to play, 55 or 60 games. But what if he does? Then you've brought in a really good rim protector. They drafted Asa Newell out of Georgia, good rim protector. I think he'll spend most of his time in the G League this year, but someone who's a very good defender. Then you bring in a great 3-and-D defender and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and suddenly it feels like the paradigm has shifted a little bit. Along with the Dyson Daniels edition last year, that the Hawks are not content to be 28th, 29th, 30th in the league in total defense and defensive rating. And maybe some of the moves that they are making could be in mind to compensate for Trae Young's defensive weaknesses. All that being said, for a guy with a strong personality like Trae Young, and I'm sure Trae believes he is worth the supermax, it feels like a dangerous game to play to go to him and say, we're not going to do that, even though you make a very good point. The Hawks are the only team that can pay him that kind of money under the way the rules are in the NBA right now. So the Hawks do have some leverage, but I don't know if that's a risk that they're willing to take at this point.
I mean, this is a different conversation for a different time, but I'm sure you've thought about this too as a guy who's around the league as much as you are, Mike. Like, the Supermax is so silly because teams are forced to negotiate against themselves, and it really just winds up hurting the incumbent team, and in some ways hurts the player. Like, yeah, you get more cash. That's nice. All these players would get a ton of cash, and they have worse teams around them, so they wind up having to carry an undue load, and they might wind up getting traded, and not having the success they would. It's a very silly thing, and I think a player like Trae Young, in many ways that Bradley Beal was here, it's like Brad at the time that he signed the Supermax was a very, very good player who should not have been making as much money as LeBron James, let's say, or Stephen Curry, and I think Trae Young safely fits into that, which leads to my final question for you, Mike, is Mike Conti, again, host 92.9 The Game in Atlanta, specifically their Hawks pre- and post-game coverage. My only concern, I love what the Hawks have done. We started talking about that. But my concern is, how much room do they have to continue to go up and get better? Have they locked themselves into being a top 4 caliber in the East as currently constructed with 3 top players out with Achilles injuries? But not good enough to win the thing. And even if they do, they feel like they would get smoked by an Oklahoma City or whoever else comes out of the West. Do they still have upward mobility with the assets they have to continue? Like, hey, this is a great offseason, and boy, wait to see what the Hawks do next year.
Yeah, a little bit, because Porzingis is on an expiring. The Luke Kennard signing yesterday, reportedly he's on a one-year deal. You still have your younger players like Reza Shea on a team-friendly deal for a couple more years. They'll have to figure out what they want to do with Dyson Daniels. I'm sure he would be in line for a big raise. The Hawks this offseason still have, I believe, a mid-level exemption that they could use that they have not deployed yet. So there might even be some upward mobility this year. Honestly, the best thing that I think the Hawks front office has done over the last week, I feel like they may have fleeced the New Orleans Pelicans a little bit on draft night by trading from 13 down to 22 to get a lottery unprotected pick next year, the better of New Orleans or Milwaukee. And keep an eye on what's going on with the Bucks now. That could very well be a top 5 pick next year. That's your big asset. That is your big chip when you look at where the Hawks could maybe have some upward mobility in making moves, whether it's this offseason, at the trade deadline coming up in February of 26, or next offseason. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, and this is something we've been talking about in Atlanta today. I love what the Hawks have done. They've made themselves better. They've made themselves deeper. They got that great chip in the draft pick. Are they one of the 4 best teams in the Eastern Conference? I cannot put this Hawks roster above Cleveland's roster right now. I can't put them above Orlando right now, to be totally honest with you. I can't put them above the New York Knicks right now. And then you start to get into the discussion, what's Indiana going to look like without Halliburton, now without Miles Turner? Does Giannis stay in Milwaukee? Miami is always kind of a wild card. They're always lurking. What are they going to do? I think your top 3 in the East is a pretty solid group right now, and I don't think the Hawks are in it.
And then the question is, what can they do? They also have multiple draft picks every year. A lot of it's like pick swap type of stuff, but they at least have that to throw in a trade as well. Mike, great stuff as always. Enjoy having fun Hawks talk, and hopefully what's going to be a fun Hawks season starting in the fall.
Yeah, we don't get to do it often, but it's been fun, and I look forward to speaking with you again.
Indeed. Mike Conti, everybody, with us here on The Hoffman Show. All right, when we get back, a couple more thoughts on NBA free agency, a couple moves that have gone down in the last half hour or so. Small ones, but we'll get you up to date on the latest. Then 5:30, take command. 6 o'clock, we switch to the W and Ben Pickman. We are locked and loaded on Tuesday, July 1st. I can't believe it's July 1st. What happened to the first 6 months of 2025? Anyway, it's The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too, at the Team 980. And I'm going to run through a couple of the other moves that we haven't even had a chance to talk about today. I figured the easiest way to do this is just to kind of scroll back in the timeline, if you will, and go back to yesterday when some of these moves went down, including probably the biggest non-Dame Lillard move. Like, this might be actually functionally the biggest move that's happened so far in the 23 hours since free agency opened. I got the alert as I was walking out the door yesterday. The Nuggets trading Michael Porter Jr. and an unprotected pick in 2032 to the Brooklyn Nets for Cam Johnson. Sources telling ESPN's Shams Charania yesterday. And, like, Cam Johnson is what Michael Porter Jr. is supposed to be, just a flamethrower three-point shooter. Porter might be a little bit better as a rebounder and thus a quote-unquote more complete player. Johnson's a guy that averaged 4.3 rebounds a game last year, but he's a 39% three-point shooter on pretty good volume, shoots it almost 50% from the field overall. Like, he was 47.5, 39, 89. Like, that's pretty close to fit the 50, 40, 90 club. That's real good. He also, in his last 10 games last year, or his last, I guess in the last 10 games the Nets played, he only played in 2 of them, but averaged 6.5 assists during that. You know, his assist numbers have consistently gone up. Let's see. In his last 3 games that he played last year, he had 8, 6, and 7 assists. So the Nets were trusting him to be a little bit more active on the ball. And he had 6 turnovers in one of those games, but he also had only 2 in the final 2 combined. So this is a Nets team that is willing to take on draft capital. They get a great pick. That 2032 pick is probably past Nikola Jokic's, certainly past his prime, if not past his career. So you know, he'll be somewhere in Serbia playing with his horses. So the Nets get a great pick, and Michael Porter Jr. is a guy that, you know, will help them do what they want to do next year, which is, hey man, we need you to eat some possessions. We're hopefully, probably, if you're them, gonna put the ball in his hands a lot, let him cook in a way he's never had the opportunity to, playing with Nikola Jokic. Can they get his trade value a little bit higher? It really is a great trade for both, because at 29, Cam Johnson is, and like, this is his prime. He's not going to be a part of when the Nets they're hoping really good in 4 or 5 years. So the Nets are kind of on the Wizards timeline. And so they get a Michael Porter Jr. who has won a championship. I don't know that he is like your ideal vet in the same way that Chris Middleton or Marcus Smart or CJ McCollum is, but he's won a championship. He's going to have a chance to rehabilitate his trade value, and they already got an unprotected first-round pick. And if you're the Nuggets and you needed to get more reliable offense around Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, Cam Johnson is a really, really good pickup. Ty Jerome, interesting to go to Memphis. Memphis, I think, is trying to compete around Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. Obviously, we talked about the Triple J extension a little bit yesterday. But Ty Jerome was someone who's a difference maker as a bench player, and him going to Memphis as opposed to any number of more thought of contenders is an interesting one worth noting. Speaking of Denver, Bruce Brown going back to Denver, we'll see if he can pick up where he left off, because he obviously hasn't been as good in the time since he left with Indiana, Toronto, or New Orleans. Speaking of New Orleans, they get Kevon Looney, which I only really mentioned. Same with Luke Cornett. Those two were names that I think the Wizards probably had some level of interest in as veterans to come in as big guys. But Looney going to go to New Orleans. I think that's a great vet for them to add, and kind of a young core that could use stability. Cornett goes to San Antonio, where he'll back up Wemby, etc. Good stretch 5 type of player. Let's see. Who else? Karis LeVert going to Detroit. So good guard depth for a Pistons team that's doing interesting stuff. We talked earlier about Brook Lopez going to the Clippers, like that move. Talked about the Hawks quite a bit. Tyus Jones going to Orlando. Obviously, big Tyus Jones fan. Loved having him here in D.C. For what he is. But what he is a backup point guard on a team that traded away their backup point guard in Cole Anthony. So now they have a reliable guy who can run offense, good shooter, low turnover, just excellent fit And he probably knows Desmond Bane pretty well, because they would have been together in Memphis earlier in Bane's career. Let's see. Taurean Prince going back to Milwaukee. Jordan Clarkson getting some extra scoring punch to New York. Agreed late last night to sign with the Knicks after he clears waivers, so that's a really good move. This morning's action kind of started with Shea agreeing to his Supermax extension with OKC. Not really a lot to report there. That's a duh. Gershon Yabusele, he said, in English, but also in French. 2 years, $12 million with the Knicks. That's a nice move for New York. Add a little bit of depth on their bench for a team that didn't really have a lot of depth last year, but he can also play with Karl Anthony Towns, with Mitchell Robinson. So good job on that. And then in the last little bit, you have Tim Hardaway Jr., 1-year deal with Denver. So they add more shooting, although he seems to disappear in the playoffs every single year. He had like one really good year with the Mavs, but mostly it feels like he has not showed up in the big moments. But he's got a lot of experience in them, and if he gets a little bit hotter in the playoffs, he's a guy that can help space the floor around Jokic as well. You know he's going to get easy shots. Kind of think of that KCP role that they lost a couple years ago. I think that's what they want Tim Hardaway Jr. in. We'll see if he can answer the bell defensively. And, of course, they also would like to see some internal improvement from their guys, Christian Brown, and on down the list. Clippers waiving center Drew Eubanks, who plans to sign with the Kings on a 1-year deal after he clears waivers. According to Shams, Eubanks had a non-guaranteed contract for 2025-26. He will sign a 1-year deal now in Sacramento. So that is the latest NBA free agency news and some reaction from stuff we didn't get to last night. When we get back, how about some football fun? How bad of an athlete can you be and still play in the NFL? That was essentially the question. And as you'll hear, there is perhaps no one more appropriate to answer it than my good pal, my co-host on Take Command, Logan Paulson. You'll hear that conversation next here on The Hoffman Show. Get to some big news in the WNBA and a really cool story that tried to find out how much is Caitlin Clark worth to the WNBA. Coming up at 6 o'clock with Ben Pickman of The Athletic. He's been a frequent guest on the show. Always great to have Ben on. Right now, though, Take Command on a Tuesday. This is actually the time slot during the season we do our Take Command Tape Tuesday. There's no tape to watch, but there is some fun stories to tell from Logan Paulson in response to a mailbag question that you will hear that was a little bit on the nose for Logan to answer. So without further ado, Take Command Tuesday here on The Hoffman Show. Take Command Mailbag Edition. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulson with you. This is a really fun one, Logan, from Silas. Or at least it's fun for me to read. We'll see how much fun it is for you to answer. Thanks for the work you and Logan do on the show. You're welcome, Silas. I had a question regarding the idea that Logan has brought up several times about athletic freaks in the NFL. Curious about is what the minimum threshold of athleticism necessary is when combined with the right amount of work and dedication to be able to quote-unquote make level. Asked a different way, among these individuals, who are the worst athletes who have been able to successfully make it as pros? Along the same lines, I'm curious where Logan would rank himself on an athletic ability scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being Julio Jones or Myles Garrett. Thanks again for the great work.
That's a hell of a question. I don't know. There's like multiple questions in there. I don't even really know where to start.
Wait, I think we should start with the fun at the end.
Okay.
Can you tell the story for the longtime listeners? You've heard this one before, but the from your tight ends coach.
So yeah, I had a tight ends coach who used to do like really comprehensive draft eval. So like he had like boxes basically. So he had like thresholds that he had calculated and determined. And basically, if you met the threshold, you were green. If you didn't meet the threshold, you were red. So like it was like arm length, 40, vertical jump weight, height, and there was something else. But it was like those 5 things, right? And basically he went back and he's like, over the last, I think he went back 20 years. Like he's like, there's been, this number of starting players at the tight end position. And he's like, only 2 of them have been reds, like across the board. Everyone else has been green in all of these metrics. And so I was like, well, who are the 2 reds? And he goes like, you are one of them. And I was like, all right. So just to give you like an idea of like athleticism, right? Like I was probably, at least on paper, I didn't fall into this other tier of athlete, right? I was kind of a guy that got by clawing and scratching, like technical development, studying, all those different things to kind of give me that edge so that I could be a starting NFL tight end for a couple, and obviously I played for longer. And, he had an interesting point. He's like, when you're doing draft stuff, and so again, this kind of bleeds into talent evaluation. He's like, there's a couple things you're looking at. One is like the measurables, and that's really important. And then 2 is like mindset. Like, do they love ball? And I think that kind of gets to the crux of the question, right? Is I was about as bad as you could have been athletically and still play in the league. But like, according to this coach and all the other coaches that I've played with, like I was at the combine this year and a coach bumped into me. He's like, dude, like if you had smoked a cigarette, if you had to drink alcohol, if you had not counted your calories or whatever, I think there's something. I pride in the fact that like I was able to like squeeze every ounce of whatever I had out of it. But it speaks, and I'm not telling that to like toot my horn, like it speaks to like this idea that you have good athletes, but you have a mindset associated to that. Like a guy that's going to improve and going to get better and going to grind and going to make it happen, and I think like that's something that is interesting to talk about. It's interesting to talk about, like with free agencies, like how free agency additions, draft additions, like, are they going to develop? Are they going to stick around? And I think that's a big element that we have a hard time dealing with and talking about because we don't get to know the players. Right. But I think that, I don't know if that definitely answers.
No, it directly answers the question. Like, it answers like the where does Logan rank and the, sorry to word this harshly, I'm just rereading the question, among these incredibly gifted athletes, which does acknowledge that like to make it in the league compared to the general population, you have to be incredibly gifted. But amongst these incredibly gifted athletes, who are the worst athletes who've been successfully make it as pros?
I'm pretty close.
Like, on the tight end front. Yeah.
Crazy
but, so like real quick to like contextualize this, what were like at your best in the NFL? Like height, weight, speed? Like what are you measuring? That way some bloke listening, I don't know why I just use bloke because I'm not English. Some bloke listening goes out and runs a 40 and realizes how fast you are compared to them.
Right. So I was probably at tallest. I've shrunk since I played. I was probably about 6'5". I was my arms were about 32 inches. I ran a 4.89 40, and I weighed 268 pounds when I did it. I bench pressed, I want to say 225, 28 times, 26 times, and I had like a close to 30-inch vertical when I jumped. So like obviously not very explosive. But you know what's crazy? I tell people that they go, "Oh, that's like not crazy," but also like to give you some context, because like no one's run a 40, no one does 225 for reps anymore, really. So in high school, like I was a 3-sport athlete. Like I played soccer on varsity for 4 years. I played varsity football for 3 years. I ran varsity track for 4 years. I used to be able to run like a sub, like right around a 400 meter split. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Which is crazy. So
that's so fast.
I used to be able to run a 2 mile. This is my big claim to fame: 10 minutes and 15 seconds when I was training for soccer. So like people think like, oh, like I could go out and be an NFL. Like I got another funny story. Give it context on the athleticism. Like I just said I was the worst athlete probably on the Washington Commanders or Washington Redskins when I was a rookie. And I had a roommate and he was like, "Hey, why don't you come play flag football with us one day?" And I was like, "Sure." And I felt like I was Julio Jones. Like I was making like mossing people.
So you're playing against, like, your roommate was not a football player.
No, he was just like a guy, right? And so I went out there and like I probably had like 3 or 4 touchdowns. I had interception, like, you know what I mean? Like a guy came up to me and said, like, "You coming out here has forever changed my perspective on what it means to be in the NFL."
100%.
Because I saw you last year as a rookie and I thought that guy's a scrub. And then you come out here and you're miles by far the best player out here. And I think like that's where the balance comes in. And like,
right.
He didn't have to say that to me. He was, but like I came out and I just did an awesome job. Like, so I think that's where it's like people think about like, I'm here. Like, who's that basketball player? The big
Brian
white
Scalabrine.
dude?
Yeah.
Like where he's like, "I'm way closer to LeBron James than you are to me." I
Right.
think there is a little bit of truth to that. When you're actually like in it, you realize like, man, like there's this thing, and like to be in this group of lesson players that play in the NFL, you have to be a decent athlete at some level. But like people don't understand like what I don't know. I've said this to you before. I don't think people can even fathom like what the pinnacle of that looks like. Seeing a Julio Jones looks like, what seeing a Trent Williams looks like what seeing a Myles Garrett looks like. It's just it's almost a different species of human being. You know what I mean? And I think like that's it's so hard for people to understand, because until they see someone like me, they have no context on like how high is the top of the mountain.
You look at Myles Garrett and you're like, that's crazy. But you're closer to Myles Garrett than like the other dudes that you were mossing on that football field. Funny, like, related story. So my first 2 years of school, I went to Middle Tennessee State before I transferred to Syracuse. And so I got to know the basketball team pretty well. I was doing a lot of basketball stuff, and I played pickup with them one time because they were just playing at the rec center, like the student rec center. And there's this kid, Zane. Shout out to Zane if somehow he ever finds this clip. But he was like the literal walk-on white guy at the end of the bench of Middle Tennessee State University.
He was amazing.
So like mid-major school. And that's who I got put on. And Zane, absolutely, like the speed at which he was able to catch and shoot, run around screens. Like if I touched the ball, I felt like I was being tackled, even though they were just playing like pickup level defense. Like the speed and intensity of that compared to, and like if those dudes went on an NBA court, like that's what they would feel like. Like it's just the levels are crazy. And there's also a very funny, unrelated to my basketball story, but related to the topic, very funny video going around the internet this past week of Kyle Juszczyk working out with his wife. And like the first video, I think I sent it to you, is like Kyle doing a medicine ball throw, and he granny tosses it over his head 30 yards. Like that thing flies. And then Kristen, his wife, grabs it, and she can like barely get it over her shoulder. And like, again, like, oh, well, she's the girl. And it's like, yeah, but he threw it 30 yards, bro. Like it is in some great YouTube stuff. Myles Garrett did a workout with like a YouTube influencer type, and Garrett does like a medicine ball thing, and he almost throws the ball on the roof of a building that's 40 feet high, and this other dude like gets it 6 feet over his head. Like, it is hard to describe how physically freakish NFL players are, but there's just a couple of examples, and you told some great stories too of the separation here.
Well, dude, like I remember like doing med ball throws, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being like me with the other tight end, like Fred Davis. Like, and again, he's like, people don't think of him as being this tremendous athlete, but he would absolutely eject that thing. Like, he'd be standing about 40 feet away and I could barely get it to him. You know what I mean? Like, it's 20-pound med ball. Like, it was a good throw. And he would just launch that thing like 50 feet, 60 feet. And I was like, dude, this is like a different, like he would do incline dumbbell bench press with like 140, for sets of 8. And I just, and it's just like, it's so hard to contextualize the level of strength, the level of physical violence, like the level of, and that's the other thing, like I always make this comparison to like horses or dogs, like anybody who's like into, like, there's like, you ever been around like a working dog? Like a retriever of some kind, and you throw a ball for them and they will literally chase that ball until they die. Like, there is a little bit of that going on with these NFL guys. Like, they are just so geared up mentally, competitive situations. Like, you've kind of created this crazy pool of natural selection. NBA too, I'm sure, is like this, where it's like, they just want to play and and they want to be the best. And that's that mental element that you're always chasing. And like, that's where, like Julio Jones is a great example of this, because he asked about Julio Jones, is like, he wanted to be the best. Like, he not only was he a freak, but he wanted to be the best. Like, if someone did something at practice, he was like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be better. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like George Kittle, same type of deal. Like, just wired in this, like this primal instinct to be like, I am better than you. I know it. And like, when you combine that with the athlete, that's when you get this kind of the guy that's riding into battle, this barbarian that just wants to win. Like, that's what those dudes are. Like, they're the definition of like alpha male, I think, is thrown around way too liberally, because like, I've seen what it looks like. Like Trent Williams, like, he's not that crazy competitor, but like, my God, like when he's on the field, like something happens to him, you know what I mean? And it's a different, not only is it a different physicality, it's a different mentality as well.
For sure. So if like Julio and Myles Garrett are 10 and Logan's 1 on the NFL scale, like most of us are at -85. So there's the perspective there. But I think that it's worth mentioning within the context of the league. You take us regular peons out of it and like try to stop saying like, okay, NFL players are way different than, like I, as someone who works out a lot and people are like, oh, you're still fit. Like, I am so far away from the threshold of an NFL athlete. Right. But with NFL, I think it's worth saying like the difference between like a 4.4 and a 4.6 receiver, and like, why can the 4 receiver make it when you're not a 4.4? And I think that's where you get to not just mentality, but like the other part that you have not mentioned that you want of why you were able to be successful is like your IQ is so high that you were able to anticipate. And so if we're literally talking about 0.2 of a second over the course of 40 yards, and if you watch like the phantom cams or whatever they call that thing that, Rich Eisen's being slow behind, but they also compare like players with it on the 40, right? And you see like, oh, there's actually like 3-4 yards of separation between a 4.6 and 4.4 guy on the 40 at the combine. So like, there's it's 0.2 of a second, but there's like real space there. How do you make that space up? And if you can anticipate and make up your 0.2 by understanding what's going to for the 4.4 guy, well, that's going to help you play at the speed you need to succeed in the NFL. The better athlete is helpful. It's like, one, if you have the athleticism and the anticipation, you get to be Jamar Chase, right? That's how like, oh, you're just so far ahead of everyone else. But even if you're a 4.4 guy who sees it a little slow, you have time, because your athleticism can make up for your lack of reaction, lack of understanding. Whereas like, you had a supercomputer up here and you were able to anticipate, and even though you weren't as fast as the guy who might also be playing your position, you'd get there at the same time when you need to, because you started faster. And like, that's why, like, is there a minimum threshold? Yes. How do you overcome? You know what the hell you're doing at such a high level that it matters less.
Yeah, I think that's for sure. And also like, there was this kind of like, guys like you were talking about with receivers specifically, guys that have like this compulsion to like learn the techniques, right? Like, like you mentioned the 4.4 guy, like one of the reasons I think you always want to try to find a faster guy that plays a skill position is it takes them 3 years to learn the coverages, 3 years to learn the techniques. And by the time they've lost that 10th, technically you don't see any difference between the players. They've got the technical acumen now to support the loss of athleticism or raw explosiveness, right? And so I think that was the other thing that looking at my career was like, I was able to like learn the techniques really well, like hand placement, like why this is important, foot position, why that's important. And I was willing to rep it a lot. Like I say this when I do this like tight end seminar out in California for my agent. And like I'd get out to practice 15 minutes early and just work footwork. I'd stay 20 minutes after to work footwork. And that's not even including film preparation, body maintenance, things like that. And so like there is a compulsive element that some of these people have, like to run a route, to work a technique from a pass protection standpoint, to understand my angle and my line and just never get bored doing the basic simple stuff. And so I think that's where, again, like they're all great athletes. Like even, like we mentioned, Tyler Owens, like he's a freak, right? But he's like a special teams backup because of he lacks some of that like football intuition right now. Can you learn it? Yeah. Right. Can you develop in that category? For sure, 100%. I think that's where special, like the starting players are special because they are usually some combination of that, right? They're a combination of, like, Terry's a great example. Like Terry kind of he's not only he's a great linear athlete, but there's like kind of an awkwardness in tracks and catches the football, but he's developed systems and methodologies to overcome whatever that deficiency is because he's compulsive about it, right? He's dogmatic about it and he's hyper competitive. And I think like that's where you get kind of that sweet spot of like NFL starter and again, there are guys that, and I'll say this, there are guys that don't have that compulsion, but they're usually out of league pretty quick because the second the speed goes, the second the size or the physicality goes, there's no methodology to overcome it. So I think that's a really good point by you. Just like there are techniques that are and a knowledge of the game that is so important that helps guys kind of survive on lesser athleticism.
Yeah, and last small point too, just we could talk about this forever because you and I are nerds about this stuff, but just there's a lot more to athleticism than like how fast you run. Like how fast you decelerate is almost more important than how fast you accelerate. You're depending on your position. If you're a receiver, your ability to stop on sure, you're not going quite as fast, but like I can stop and that corner is still going. Well, now I have separation, the ability to get in and out of cuts. Like there is a more than like linear acceleration and top speed that doesn't get measured at the combine, or you have to kind of know what you're looking for to find it within the numbers or whatever that measures athleticism too. So what we consider an athletic, like nobody considers Nikola Jokic an athletic freak, but he is. Luka Doncic, like his ability to accelerate, reshift his weight, like get on balance. Like balance is such an important part of athleticism, and we don't measure that because how would you? Like those are the kinds of things that I think also really matter too, that aren't going to show up on your traditional combine testing.
Yeah. So just to piggyback on that real quick, like it's like that's where like defining athleticism, it's so easy to be like, oh, height, weight, speed, jump, whatever. Yeah. But like it's much more layered, much more nuanced. Like there's like a reactive element to it also, you know what I mean? That I think we haven't really touched on, but it's more layered. Like I think a great example of this, a simple example is like DBs, for example. Like they all are great movers, right? But some of the best athletes I've ever seen have been really bad at playing DB because they lack that kind of fluidity to track a football in the air or adjust to a receiver or make some of those things. And that's not going to show up in like a jump metric, right? But it's athletic. It's like the same way that a ballerina is athletic. Like there's some of that kind of fluidity here too that I think is really underrated in this athletic conversation generally, which, like it comes up with some of those things we talked about with like Luka and other kind of non-athletes,
Right. Hope that answered your question, Silas. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well in the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. Of course, you're home for Mystics basketball. Sticks get back to it on Thursday. They'll take on the Minnesota Lynx, who are busy tonight playing the Indiana Fever in the Commissioner's Cup final. There is news, though, and to talk about all of the things that we've just mentioned above and more, Ben Pickman from The Athletic joins us. Ben is actually on site for the Commissioner's Cup final tonight. So, Ben, first of all, thanks for some time on a busy day.
Yeah, no problem. Busy week, honestly, in the WNBA.
It really is. It really is. The expansion, which we'll get to, you and your colleague, our friend Sabrina Merchant, wrote a great piece on Caitlin Clark's value to the league, and that obviously plays into the expansion discussion. And I know you've been busy with all that. You've been busy writing and reporting that piece. You've been busy on the Commissioner's Cup. And then I guess at that point, sometime your phone goes off the same mine does, and our colleague at ESPN, Alexa Philippou, is reporting that, oh, hey, by the way, the Mystics apparently have been fielding calls on Aaliyah Edwards. How surprised were you to see that news, and what more can you tell us about kind of where Aaliyah is with the Mystics and her value around the league?
Yeah, not totally shocked in the regards that she is a second-year player who I think a lot of people came in with pretty high expectations for how she was going to perform this year. I mean, you think about it, both, a standout rookie season and then carrying that momentum into Unrivaled, where, she was primed to be one of the players who, was going to take that experience and kind of make a leap in year 2 in the WNBA. And frankly, we just haven't seen that fit yet. There's a lot to like about how the Mystics have performed this year. But if you look at Aaliyah Edwards in her role, right, she hasn't started a game after starting 17 last year. Her minutes total down 7 this year. Her shooting percentage down. Overall scoring as a result down. Just across the board, she just has not been as productive. And so, you think about it in the state that the WNBA right now, she's a cost control player in that she's under contract for a number of seasons. That's rare, all things considered. Still, obviously, like high potential, top, a 6th pick in the draft last year. So it makes sense that teams around the league would be looking at saying, hey, like, we might need a 4, someone who we can develop. Like, is she on the market? And Washington obviously is doing just fine with, Austin and Iria Fenn in the front court.
Right, and that's the thing. I feel so bad for Aaliyah in a lot of ways. And, I talked to her in the preseason. She's so excited. She's feeling, her best. She's confident. Not that she was ever lacking in confidence, but, like, really confident she could do it at the NBA level. And then or the WNBA level, she gets hurt. Kiki starts. Kiki's been a revelation. And you're just, if you're Sydney Johnson and the staff or even the front office trying to manage it from above, I don't really know what to do about the fact that your 4th overall pick this year is playing at an unbelievable level. And Shakira Austin, by the way, since being reinserted into the starting lineup, has been a borderline, like, I don't know, all WNBA caliber player. I feel like she has a double-double every night, and she's getting 18 to 25 points a game.
Right, exactly. And that's where, the news of this report is not so surprising. Because, again, for all the factors you said, like, she could be doing a lot more. And if you think about where Washington is, big picture, yeah, they've gotten off to this really, impressive start. I think, surprising a lot of people just how they've looked and how hard they continue to compete. Well, like, this is a team, though, that is still building towards the future. And so the question then becomes, is Aaliyah Edwards a part of the future? What role is she in the part of the future? In Washington, a team that already is loaded with future draft assets, like, could they add another? I would assume it's not out of the question here.
Right. One thing that is in the back of my mind, too, is Aaliyah, Canadian from the Toronto area. Would they hold on to the end of the season and then try to see what they can get out of Toronto in terms of future draft capital or draft capital in this draft? But whoever gets Aaliyah, they'll be lucky to have her. She's a wonderful, wonderful person and obviously a very talented player. Just it's the hardest league in the world in terms of concentration, and they got a lot of talent here. So with that said, Ben, this league is going to get bigger, starting with Toronto next year. Nice unintentional transition by the host there. Ben Pickman with us here on the Hoffman Show. Ben, women's basketball writer for The Athletic. So Toronto next year, we have Golden State, obviously, this year playing extraordinarily well and selling out Chase Center on a regular basis. And then you have the 3 new additions
coming up in Detroit, Cleveland, and Philadelphia. Josh Harris's Philadelphia in 2030. Why do you think that the W did this in terms of a timing standpoint, spreading the teams out like this? And what are the advantages and what are the complications of that?
Well, I should say also Portland coming into the WNBA
Portland
next year.
Right.
So hardest league to enter becomes, not only are you going from 12 to 18, not 17. So a lot is changing over the next 5 years or so. The timing question is a really interesting one. I mean, I was at the announcement on Monday in Midtown Manhattan at the WNBA NBA League offices when all this news became public. And Kathy Engelbert said in a scrum of reporters that, of the three, Cleveland was the most ready right now. An example of that being, they're entering in 2028 right away, right after the announcement was made public. They started to sell basically like seat deposits. They were the only one of those three teams, Detroit and Philadelphia being the other two new expansion markets to do so. The timing is most interesting as it relates to Philadelphia, I think, big picture. And this is obviously an interest in your market because the Sixers, as we know, that ownership group has just announced plans earlier this winter to build a new stadium that they want to own. And that stadium is set to open in, I believe, 2031 is their kind of hopeful timeline. And so basically by announcing the WNBA franchise when they did, they give themselves this long runway and that they are kind of hoping that the stadium might actually be ready for the 2030 WNBA season. Josh Harris wouldn't say that that is definitely going to happen, but he kind of is saying we're going to try and put some pressure on ourselves to finish it so that the new WNBA team could play in that timeline, and then we'll see what happens with the practice facility too. But by announcing it when they did, it gives them a little bit of runway to sort it all out with this new arena, which seemingly is so important for these WNBA teams. The other thing I will say is, the $250 million expansion fee, significant. It's a record. That is what these three teams paid to get into the league. And the WNBA really operated in this process like we want to figure out first, and this is what Kathy Engelbert said, we want to figure out how many teams we want to add and kind of the number we want to get to. And they decided on 18 that we're going to add 3 more. And then they kind of worked and said, okay, it's going to be Cleveland, it's going to be Detroit, and it's going to be Philly.
Houston, by the way, lingering as well as a team that wants in. Obviously, the great history there with the Houston Comets, and as you wrote on The Athletic, that could come either future expansion sometime in the 2030s or the Connecticut Sun are up for sale and could wind up being relocated. So something to keep an eye on for sure there. The expansion comes at a time where the W is more flush with cash than it has ever been. Obviously, Caitlin Clark plays an enormous role in that, and you and Sabrina wrote a piece on The Athletic that tried to answer just how much she is worth to the league. What'd you find?
Close to $1 billion is what one person told us, and to women's sports more generally, well over $1 billion is what another economist we talked to. That her overall value to women's sports definitely starts with a B. And you just have to think about this idea that it's not just what Caitlin Clark is bringing to the Indiana Fever, and we saw in the kind of recent valuations that Forbes and Sportico did, significant valuation increases, within the Indiana Fever specifically, but like other teams around the league, right? Think about just all the attendance records that, break when the Indiana Fever come to town. We had, one industry source say that she's making opposing owners 7 figures when she shows up, right? And then you think about just what she means to all the people out there who suddenly are more interested in women's sports holistically, right? Women's soccer, women's hockey, Olympic sports, like just the business of women's sports is changing. And if you look at figures who are at the center of conversation, at the center of the women's sports economy, Caitlin Clark is that. Like she is just driving interest overall just by her mere presence.
Obviously, she is, you talk about the cost-controlled asset element with Aaliyah. She is on a very similar contract. She's in the same draft, and we know the new CBA is coming. She's making roughly $78,000 this year from the WNBA. How loud do you expect her voice to be in, whether it is her voice directly or other players saying like, hey, look at her in these WNBA, PA, WNBA negotiations around this new CBA and basically being like, look, we have people like Caitlin who are incredibly popular and are drivers of revenue in ways that you guys running the league have never been able to generate. So how do we try to make that right? Like, what do you expect? Like, what role does this kind of research, the expansion, the obviousness of being at games and seeing the seats filled, do for these CBA negotiations?
I mean, I will say what I don't expect to happen, and I don't expect there to be like a Messi rule or a David Beckham rule, right? Where like you're suddenly saying that Caitlin Clark can be paid, I'm throwing out a completely hypothetical number, $100 million in a year, and she's the only player who can make that, and everyone else is, going to make $1 million. But I do think, the priority for players clearly is increasing salaries and increasing the max salaries. And players know that like the business is on this upward trajectory. It is clearly changing. They're adding 3 teams with the expansion fees that we said. So like, where is the boom for player salaries coming from? Like the WNBA likes to tell players argue that the WNBA likes to tell a story of success, but then when they sit down at the negotiating table, it's like, where is the payoff for us? And so maybe that will be in the form of, significant max salary increases, which I think is fair. The other question is, what about, revenue sharing is another topic, right? How that's something we get into. That is another big thing. And like hard salary cap is the third one, right? Like the WNBA, it is very tough when you throw out Aaliyah Edwards trades at the beginning. It's really hard in many cases to make trades work in the middle of the WNBA season because this is a hard cap league where money is really tight. So if there's a softening of a cap in a negotiation, that could be another way to both get money for players, increase movement, flexibility, certain things like that.
Ben Pickman from The Athletic with us for another minute or two here on the Hoffman Show. The other things they could go for, more jobs by expanded rosters. I think that would also make some of the trade machinations a little easier. The other thing that I would be curious about, Ben, and this kind of ties into the expansion piece, is control. Like if I'm a player, you can just trade me. You can just cut me. You can do this. You can do that. Like, especially considering how many teams are coming into the league. Do you think that there will be a push to limit the expansion drafts or eliminate the expansion draft or some other element of player control where they can feel comfortable like their colleagues in the NWSL when they sign a contract for X years to play in City Y, that they will actually do that unless they agree to leave?
I think first off, it's starting with standardizing the expansion draft procedures, right? That was something when I was talking to starting to check in with executives and people around the league yesterday. Like that is something the WNBA is going to have to put in place now that, not only do you have 2 teams coming in next year, but you have 3 over the next, 4 or 5 years. And so putting in a clear procedure so that players know, okay, these are the rules of play here. And also so that teams know these are the rules of play, because right now there is, an opacity, a vagueness in like how many players are going to get protected. Maybe it's this one year, maybe it's that another year. Like that is an open question with another expansion draft looming. So I think that is actually the first place where control will be sought after versus like just getting rid of an expansion draft all told. But again, these are like some of the big questions that will need to get sorted out here because, schedule length is going to probably be different. WNBA footprint will probably have to be different in this new era of expansion. That's another big change. You mentioned roster size as well. Like now, do you really, will teams want to expand the roster size? You're adding 50 jobs, more than 50 jobs in with all these new expansion teams. Is that diluting the product more, right? If you go from 12 to 15 and you add 5 teams, like that's a lot of new players who are coming into the WNBA, and maybe the product is lesser by 2030 as a result. So these are all some of the big questions the league is wrestling with. We just have a little bit more clarity now, knowing that there is a plan to go to 18 by 2030.
Ben Pickman writing about it all at The Athletic. Ben, always great to chat, sir. Thank you.
Likewise.
It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube too at the Team 980. We just talked to Ben Pickman, who wrote a great story in The Athletic with his colleague and our friend Sabrina Merchant, who's a good friend of the show as well, about the value of Caitlin Clark when it comes to the WNBA. And according to what they were able to find out and talking to economists and various people, Caitlin Clark is worth over $1 billion to the NBA. There is no doubt that Caitlin Clark is the most important person in the sport, and probably, actually not even probably, she is also the most important player in women's sports, period, across sports. She has helped the popularity of other leagues because she has put women's sports into the mainstream. She has made women's sports, for lack of a better word, cool, nevertheless acceptable to talk about. And that's awesome. It shouldn't have taken her, but it always takes someone. It took Larry and Magic in the NBA, and then to a greater extent, Michael, to like really hit that cool factor of the Air Jordan brand. And, you know, baseball has waxed and waned on its popularity over the years, peaking with, you know, guys, the Maguire-Sosa home run race in 98, for instance. Like, the NFL has been pretty sustainable over time, but Caitlin Clark, without question, is the most important female athlete on the planet, certainly in America, and even more certainly, if such a thing could exist, in the WNBA. The other main story about Caitlin Clark today is that her peers in the W voted her 9th in All-Star voting. And for some reason, I'll just let that hang out there. For some reason, some people think these stories are related. And I cannot stress this enough. Those people are wrong. Both things can be true. Caitlin Clark was properly rated, in my opinion, by her fellow colleagues in the league for pretty straightforward basketball reasons that we'll get to in a second. And she is the most important player in the sport in terms of its business side. But that's the thing. The business side and the basketball side don't have to mix perfectly. All-star voting is not how much you are worth to the league. It's how good of a season are you having so far. And I would like to read off some stats from Caitlin Clark and also some context on this voting. The players rank, they don't rank like 1 through 15. They pick 4 guards. And so a lot of players just left Clark off their ballot because they didn't think, and it's very easy to see why, she's not one of the top 4 guards this season in the WNBA. She was correctly a top 5 MVP candidate last season, but last season isn't this season. This season, Clark has only played 9 games. Most teams have played 16 or 17. And by the way, she is also out again tonight for the Commissioner's Cup final against Minnesota. But she was left off enough ballots that her her cumulative score for those that she was on was 9th. She is shooting 29% from 3 this year, 39% from the field, and is averaging nearly 6 turnovers a game in 9 games. On what planet is that better than what Sabrina Ionescu is doing? Than what Aaliyah Gray, who amongst players and media was the number 1 guard. Aaliyah Gray is having an unbelievable season for the Atlanta Dream, who are having an unbelievable season as a team. They are far exceeding expectations. So if you want to put Caitlin Clark over Aaliyah Gray because you're a fan and you'd rather watch Caitlin Clark, I guess that's fine. Ultimately, the All-Star Game is an exhibition and a marketing event, but players care about being named to this, and they are not doing it based off popularity. Players are not voting based off of who do the fans want to see. And if you want it to just be that, then take away the player and the media voting and just let the fan vote rule everything and stop using all-star appearances when we talk about players' Hall of Fame cases across sports. But if we're going to have it be on some level of merit, the idea that Caitlin Clark isn't wasn't voted near the top of the All-Star list for guards in the WNBA based off the first half of the 2025 season is not only correct, it's blatantly obvious. And let's take a couple of rookies to compare her stats to. Sonia Citron here with the Mystics. Sony this season has played in all 17 games. She's averaging 15.1 points per game. Clark is averaging 18.2. They're dead even on rebounds. Clark has a much higher assist total. They're more or less even in steals and blocks. 1.2 to 1.6, 0.3 to 0.7. However, Citron is shooting 47% from the field compared to Clark's 39%. 38% from three compared to Clark's 29.5. She's shooting better from the free throw line, and her effective field goal percentage is 54.9%, which is ridiculous for a guard. Caitlin's is 47.2, which is fine. Also, Citron's averaging 2.0 turnovers per game. Clark is averaging 5.9. So, when you look at those two, who is more deserving? If you like efficiency, I would say it's Citron. If you want to make the argument for, Clark carries a much larger load, I have no problem on that. But what about, and if you want to look at, for instance, there is a stat for that, if I can find it real quick, their usage rate. Clark's usage rate is 31.7%. Citron's is only 19.5%. So, okay, fine. But if you look at advanced numbers, if you want to go that route and look at things like win shares, Citron way higher than Clark. Citron 2.1, that's a monster number. 0.4 on the season for Clark. Okay, well, what about the other most popular player in the league, who's also a rookie, Paige Beckers? First of all, Paige has also missed games this year. She's played more than Clark. Clark, 9 games. I feel like I should pause for a second. I'm a big Caitlin Clark fan. I love her game. I've talked about that before. But the arguments that are trying to be made on her behalf and the outrage, real or fake, on her behalf is embarrassing. Beckers averaging more points per game within 0.7 rebounds per game. Clark, again, the assist numbers, that's one of her superpowers, but Paige, a respectable 5.8, which is top 5, I believe, in the league. Clark, 8.9, would lead the league if she qualified, but she hasn't played enough games. Beckers, more steals, more blocks, higher field goal percentage significantly, higher three-point percentage by a decent enough margin, higher free throw percentage by 6%, and an effective field goal percentage that is 2.5 percentage points higher. When you look at their turnover numbers, again, Clark averaging 5.9 per game, Beckers 2.2 per game. And if you look at their usage rates, they're a little closer. Clark 31.7%, and Beckers is 23%. So has the ball in her hands a lot more. But again, if you look at the win shares type of numbers, Clark offensively, for as great as she is, or as prolific as she is as a three-point shooter and the deep threes and the assists, Clark has a negative win share on the year offensively. Negative. So if you take all the advanced stats and you kind of balance it out based off of her true shooting percentage, which is fairly low considering how many threes she takes, and the turnovers, she's actually not helping the Fever win on offense based off of the numbers. So while Clark is no doubt a great player, this is not actually a reflection to me of who she is as a player. And I think that's the other thing that people get twisted, and more innocently than she should make the All-Star team because she's worth $1 billion. And it's like, no, that's not how All-Star teams work. But if you look at who she is as a player, am I selling my Caitlin Clark stock? Absolutely not. She's awesome and is going to figure out the turnover thing, I would assume, over time, and will continue. Her shot's going to start going in more. I do not worry about Caitlin Clark as a player and her ability to be a future MVP and a future champion in this league. But it's okay to say all that and also go, she doesn't deserve to be an all-star based off the first half of her 2025 season because her teammate, Kelsey Mitchell, is having a better season, Paige Beckers is having a better season. Sonia Citrod's having a better season. Not to mention, I think some of the top true guards in the NBA who really deserve to be all-stars based off what they've done in the first half of 2025. And there we get to players like Alicia Gray. Kelsey Plum's been really, really good for LA. On down the list, Sabrina Ionescu, who was second, I believe, in the voting amongst players, has been great. Skylar Diggins is having a hell of a season for Seattle. So on down the list, if you can name 4, I can tell you flat out, Caitlin Clark would not be in my top 4. She would not have been on my ballot if I was a voter. If I'm buying future stocks, she's my number 1. If I'm talking about who I would, want to have some kind of stock in their jersey sales, number 1. 2025 All-Star ballot, not in the top 4. And so I hope that people will take a deep breath and stop freaking out about her being ranked 9th. Well, let's just say my faith in that is not very high. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We can take your calls on that next, 301-230-0980, plus the latest in NBA free agency as we wrap up here on the Team 980. It's Hoffman Show, brought to you by Amazon. I've got some good news, and I've got some great news. The good news is that Prime Day is almost here. The great news, this year, you'll have 4 days to find deals on all of your favorite things. Shop Prime Day, July 8th through the 11th. Of course, we're here on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming on YouTube, too, at the Team 980. Following up on the last segment, and again, if you want to get a call in, 301-230-0980. But Ben, I'll bring you in here. First of all, how much W do you watch? Like, are you a WNBA fan? It's okay if you're not. I know you're a big baseball guy, so that might be where your viewing goes in the summer. This is not meant to be a moral judgment. I'm just asking a question as a sports viewer.
Yeah, admittedly, I don't watch a lot. The most I hear WNBA is when I'm in here producing the Mystics game. So that'll be the bulk of the WNBA that I take in. I see the highlights and stuff, and I think all that stuff has been great. I think we've seen a lot of value increase in the league over the past couple of years, and it's great that we have a lot more interest in it, not just from people like you on the radio, but also sports talk shows. If you turn on ESPN, you'll see segments about the WNBA. So it's a lot easier to keep up with it, but admittedly, I'm not watching it as much as I could.
Yeah, and the segments that are on some of the sports talk shows might be some of the dumbest television that
Probably
exists, which is that's a race to the bottom amongst morning sports talk television. But I ask that just for background, for context. But I also have a more general question, which is kind of like, what's the point of an all-star game? Right? And that's where I think that there is a real discussion to be had about, say, a Caitlin Clark in this year's WNBA All-Star game. Like, for the league as an exhibition, it is, I don't want to say essential. Like, the league won't fold if she's not there. But, like, it is way better for the league from a business standpoint. They will make a lot more money. They will get a lot more eyes. And frankly, it is better for all the other players as well, because they get more eyes on them because of the eyes Clark brings in if she is playing in the All-Star game. And especially because the game is in Indianapolis. It is a home game for Clark. There is a lot of hope that she is going to do the three-point contest, which will be very fun. She, they asked her to do a shootout type at the NBA All-Star game this past year, similar to what Sabrina Ionescu did with Stephen Curry a couple years ago. And she declined, and part of the reason that kind of trickled out, I don't know if she ever officially said this, was kind of like, I want to do my first one at W All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis because it was going to be this summer. And I think that for that reason, like media who ranked her like third, I think, which is kind of embarrassing, frankly, for the media, but like fans far and away, she's the number one vote getter. I'm kind of glad she's in the game. Right? Because I think it's good for the league. But if we're talking about deserving based off of like the seasons that have been had, it's a no-brainer. She doesn't deserve to be on the All-Star team. And I just like, I think both things can be true because like then what happens, right, is like, oh, everyone's jealous, they hate her. And that's the part I didn't say in the last segment, and I just will clarify now. That's the dumbest thing going right now. Players are not jealous of Caitlin Clark. Like, they are very happy that their paychecks are getting bigger, that there are more opportunities for them. They realize she's a part of it. They also want to kick her butt because she's really, really good, and that's what being a competitor is. Any, especially young player that comes up, it doesn't matter about their popularity. It's like, oh, you think you're good? Watch me. I remember talking to someone, like a player in the league, when Ryan Howard, who most people listening have never heard of, great young player for Atlanta, when she came out, and like, you know, this player had quite a bit of fun shutting her down. Like, oh, you're the hotshot rookie? Let's have some fun. And sure, from a competitive standpoint, do they want to shut Clark down when they play? Yes. Do they wish her ill will? No. That's ridiculous. But, like, kind of this fundamental question of, like, what is an all-star game? Is it supposed to be purely for recognizing who the best of the best is in a given season? Like, we are sold that it is? Or is it a marketing exhibition? And is it okay that it's kind of a mix of both? And depending on your answer to that, I think will determine how you feel about Clark making, for instance, this year's All-Star game. Nevertheless, what happens with the Pro Bowl or the NBA All-Star game or Major League Baseball's All-Star game, coming up next week.
It's a mix of both, obviously. And I feel like to anyone that takes in sports knows that an all-star game is primarily more of an entertainment thing. That's why fan voting is such an important aspect of it. And, I want to take other sports out of the equation when discussing this, especially with Caitlin Clark. But if LeBron decided next year in year number 23 to miss the first 500 shots he took, did not have a single field goal, you think he wouldn't be in the all-star game? He still would get voted in the all-star game. It's a novelty thing. I think Caitlin Clark has to be in the All-Star game for the WNBA. One, just because of the people that she brings in. Of course, now that it's in Indiana this year, I think that's going to be an important thing. People are going to want to go out there and see her. I mean, the crowds that she's drawn in when they're on the road at opposing arenas is one thing just to put in perspective for the WNBA.
Just real quick, in case people didn't hear this in Ben Pickman's appearance with us earlier in the hour, there are some estimates from like league people, business people, that every time Caitlin Clark visits an opposing arena, she's producing like $1 million in revenue. It's crazy the amount of money she is making for the league.
She can't not be in the All-Star game.
And think of what it's called, right? It's the All-Star game. And she is the biggest if we're defining stardom by popularity, she's the biggest star. She should be there.
It's popularity contest, and I think that's how it is in sports, and that's kind of the way it should be. Because All-Star games are not serious, they don't have implications on anything in terms of what happens the rest of the season. I know baseball was the only sport for a long time that actually had implications, like who got to have home field in the World Series, which I think was the dumbest thing ever. Why are you leaving that fate up to something that's happening in an exhibition game that, quite frankly, doesn't matter? So I think Caitlin Clark absolutely has to be in there. And now it's good that you put into perspective for me, because I didn't know that she was not having the best season. I know that she struggled with her health a little bit, but from the numbers that you did give us, if she was not Caitlin Clark, she would not be in the All-Star game. That is something that is very obvious to someone that I guess would know basketball and understands how she compares to other players in the league right now. But she still has the potential to be a bona fide superstar player in this league. We've seen the flashes of it, and just the popularity alone, she has to be in the game for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like ultimately I'm fine with her being in the game. What I don't understand is the anger for people, like the outrage. And sometimes I feel like the media gets in front of the outrage. Like it's there if you want to search for it online. But does the media blow it up and it's like it's almost inflammatory in a way? Like, oh, opposing players vote Caitlin Clark 9th. It's like, yeah, because they're not voting on popularity. They're voting based off of basketball results. And that's okay. Like they should. It should be some balance of popularity and achievement. And in this particular year, based off of the first half of the season, Caitlin Clark's going to be there on popularity. There's also a great chance, because of how good she is, that by the end of the year, we will look back at her basketball reference page in 5 years and be like, yeah, no kidding, she was an all-star in 2025. Look how great she was when she finishes top 10 in MVP voting and has a great second half of the season. This is the other silly part about all-star games being in the middle of seasons. Oh, a 2025 all-star based off of half a season. But based off the first half of the season, players absolutely got it right. Based off who she is and what she means to the game and the amount of people that love her, fans got it right. And it's perfectly fine, in my opinion, to have a balance of those two things. When we get back here on the Team 980, we wrap things up with real things real people said into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the team at 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, too, at the team 980, where you're now watching me fight with my phone. Or a reminder when I get home. You got to love it when Siri just doesn't work for you, Ben. It's like, hey, you digital assistant, you.
Well, you got the Not Now Siri hour opener. I played that one today, actually, to open the show.
You did. And
so
now,
it's kind of funny.
And now Siri feels like she's fighting back. And it's like, no. I don't want to be reminded at a time. I need to be reminded when I get home to get the packages.
Siri must have heard the show today.
Yeah.
Even though we were not on AM radio for a period of time because of the storm.
Are we back on now?
I honestly have no idea.
Okay.
Nobody's told me anything, so I'd assume we're good.
Well, hopefully we're good. Hopefully, if you're listening on the radio now, you've been listening for a while. If not, you're on YouTube or you're on the app or you're on the web or you're listening on the radio, but you're on the FM HD2 signal that you've been able to enjoy most of the show because there was a gigantic storm that rolled through earlier, which also, by the way, threw my plans. My plan, Ben, today was to bike in, which I do often on Nats game days. But also, I should have said this in What's Trending. The Nats have been postponed. They're going to play a doubleheader tomorrow where the weather is supposed to not be torrential downpour worth of thunderstorms. But I quickly audibled to drive here and then and was like, okay, let's do that. And thank God I did because, oh, my God, that storm was nuts.
Was there no, event parking in the lot because of the storm?
I think I got here before they shut down. I mean, they also postponed the game pretty early.
Yeah, so it happened at 4.
I was here early enough that I did get into the garage downstairs. Anthony and I have discussed this. There is a secret lot that you can park in for free on non-game days around here.
Is it really a secret?
It can stay a secret to the general public, Ben. I'm happy to tell you where it is, and you sound like you already know, but we don't need to announce that to the world.
I'm aware.
Yeah, you can be aware. We don't need to announce that to the world, and we are theoretically on the radio right now. And if not, accessible in many ways, including by searching The Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app so you can listen on demand anytime, anywhere. Ding. The point is, I paid for a garage today so that my car was not outside. And also because there was a chance, I do think the sky, it's been done for a while. I think the sky got it out of its system. But there was a chance that it was going to be raining when we got out of here, too. And I didn't want to have to walk outside in that. So I was willing to pay a premium to be undercover.
Yeah, it makes sense. Got a long metro ride home as well. So I was kind of hoping it was going to rain while I was on the metro. Because by the time I get out of the city and I get back into Maryland, I get the nice outside views, mostly of just the Beltway, unfortunately.
Oh, you're like, look at you poor suckers not moving while I move on the metro.
Pretty much. But I take it all the way to Shady Grove at the end of the red line. So it does take quite a while to get back home.
That's a hike. I often will take the metro on days where the Nats play as well. But biking it's a great. I love biking through the city, and especially now that they've added some of the protected bike lanes and the spots where I got to go. But that was not in the cards today. But I think it could be in the cards for tomorrow. So TBD. Weather, please cooperate. I tell you what is in the cards for tomorrow. I do believe we're gonna have a pretty cool guest, and that guest is actually tangentially related to today's edition of Real Things Real People Said into Real Microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
Alrighty then. Last night at the Howard Theater, the women's game, the podcast for Men in Blazers, did a live show because tomorrow, there will be, dude, it is going to be chaos down here tomorrow because we got Nats doubleheader, and then the U.S. women's national team is playing Canada in the old Continental Classico across the street at Audi Field. So, your metro is a nice way to get out of this part of town tomorrow because
got to do it.
And the bike might have to happen too because the metro is going to be chaos. Everything chaos. That is what is going to be down here tomorrow. But they hosted Tara McKeown from the Washington Spirit. They had Canada's coach, Casey Stoney, on. And they also had Georgia Amor and tomorrow's guest on this show, Sonia Citron, who we talked about a little bit earlier in the show as well. Sony making her return to the Hoffman show for the first time since the preseason. Very excited to have her on. But she and Georgia sat down with Sam Mewis and Becky Sauerbrunn and Roger Bennett, as part of the Women's Game live show. And pretty cool story from Georgia Amore, who is, of course, missing this season. Terrible torn ACL on the second day of training camp. And she actually got a text from one of the other young stars in D.C. After that happened.
And I know that you've developed really meaningful relationships with a number of the Spirit players. Trinity Rodman shot a video for you welcoming you to the city when you arrived. It was incredibly meaningful and beautiful to find out that Croy Bethune was one of the first to text you when you were injured. Can you put into words?
First of all, I love the crowd going, "Aww." Like just it's both a cute awe and a sad awe because she tore her ACL, but it's also a very nice thing that Croy did.
Can you put into words? Can you put into words what it's like to be part of this incredible community amongst the players here?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, first of all, Croy messaged me and she goes, "Hey, I'm Croy, I play for the Spirit. Like, I know we haven't met each other." And I was like, "I know exactly who you are. You do not need to introduce yourself." But it's just amazing to get that support. It's like you said, the city as a whole it's together. I mean, we went to the soccer game and we couldn't leave without taking a bunch of pictures because it was just like the community getting behind all the sports, and it matters the most. I think coming from, like colleges where that was huge, the environment, it makes championship teams. Like it's in the culture. Everyone uses the word culture. Not many people really uphold it, but Washington does, and it feels like that.
Love it. Love it. Also, knowing Croy a little bit, I'm not surprised that she did that. She's just a selfless person who would absolutely do that. And unfortunately, she's had her fair share of troubles with knee injuries over the years. But excited to talk to Sonia Citron tomorrow on the show. We'll see what else pops up. Thanks again, Ben Strober, being in with me today. A couple more days. By the way, I can report Haney's loving Paris, so we'll get a full report from him next week. That's our show for today. We'll see you tomorrow here on the Team 980.